Good afternoon, everybody. This is Mike Brennan here at the National Hurricane Center. It's just after 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time on Wednesday with an update here on Hurricane Idalia. Thanks for your patience bearing with us. We had some technical issues when we tried to do the live stream earlier this morning, but we're here with the latest on the hurricane now. Idalia is centered now in southeastern Georgia, located about 40 miles northeast of Valdosta. Still a hurricane with maximum sustained winds of around 80 miles per hour, moving very quickly off to the north-northeast at 20 miles per hour. And you can see the expansive rain shield across portions of central Georgia, northeastern Georgia, stretching into portions of South Carolina. We still have sustained hurricane force winds, especially in gusts occurring near the center of Idalia, producing damage, tree damage, power outages spreading across portions of Georgia. I want to recap a little bit about what happened early this morning. Idalia made landfall as a strong Category 3 hurricane around 7:45 a.m. Eastern Time near Keaton Beach, Florida, here in the Big Bend region. Very powerful storm, and we saw in terms of storm surge. This is the National Ocean Service water level gauge at Cedar Key, well to the southeast of where Idalia made landfall. This red line here shows you the approximation for the inundation above ground level. It was almost 7 feet above ground level at that particular water level station, and we expect that there were much higher inundation values farther to the north and west, close to the landfall location, where we still actually have a storm surge warning in place for much of the Big Bend region, including Tampa Bay, where we still have residual high water values or high water levels along the coast. Those are going to gradually start to subside as we come out of high tide this afternoon and the winds decrease along the west coast of Florida. However, we still have a storm surge warning in effect farther north along portions of the Georgia and South Carolina coast for places like Savannah and Charleston, where we could be looking at as much as 3 to 5 feet of inundation above ground level from St. Catharines Sound up to the South Santee River. We also have the potential for some inundation of 2 to 4 feet from Beaufort to Ocracoke Inlet, and also in portions of the Neuse and Bay Rivers and portions of the Pamlico Sound of North Carolina. Those water level values will be coming up later today and tonight as we approach the next high tide. But moving on from the storm surge threat, we're going to talk now about the forecast, and we expect the center of Idalia to move very quickly northeastward, reaching the coast of Georgia and South Carolina by this evening, and then turning eastward, moving near or over portions of southeastern North Carolina, and then offshore as we go through the day Thursday and into the weekend. We have hurricane warnings in place still along the Florida coast, along portions of the Georgia and South Carolina coast, with tropical storm warnings in effect from Charleston all the way up to places like Wilmington, Morehead City, Cape Hatteras, all the way up to the Virginia-North Carolina border, for the potential for those winds to occur and affect those areas. Dangerous winds still occurring near the center of Idalia right now, and those winds are going to translate over to the Atlantic coast. If you look at the watch warning map, you can see we have hurricane warnings in effect for much of southeastern Georgia, tropical storm warnings in effect for the southern half of South Carolina, southeastern North Carolina, up to the Outer Banks, and with some substantial wind impacts still expected from this system. However, I do want to turn to the rainfall threat. That's going to be sort of our most widespread threat we're going to see over the next 24 hours or so. In this red area in particular, we could see considerable impacts and some life-threatening flash and urban flooding in places like Wilmington, North Carolina, Fayetteville, Columbia, South Carolina, down to just west of Savannah into southeastern Georgia and into the Charleston area. We are expecting to see widespread rainfall totals of 4 to 8 inches along and just to the west of the track of the center of Idalia. We could see isolated totals even higher than that, some approaching 10 or 12 inches. There are currently flash flood warnings in effect in portions of central Georgia, where we've seen some very high rainfall rates. So that's an issue you want to pay attention to as we go through the rest of today into tonight and even into tomorrow in portions of North Carolina. A reminder that flooding due to heavy rainfall has been the biggest killer in tropical storms and hurricanes in this country in the last 10 years. So this is not a hazard that you want to underestimate. We are also looking at the potential for tornadoes. We have a tornado watch in effect for places like Savannah, Charleston, Myrtle Beach, up to Wilmington, North Carolina. And through tomorrow morning, the highest chance of tornadoes is going to be along coastal portions of South Carolina and North Carolina, where we have an enhanced risk, a level 3 out of 5 risk for tornadoes during that time frame. So again, tornadoes associated with tropical storms and hurricanes can develop relatively quickly. You may not have a lot of lead time, so you want to have a way to get warnings. Make sure wireless emergency alerts are turned on your phone, and that you have multiple ways to receive warning information throughout the rest of today and into tonight. So just to wrap things up here with Hurricane Idalia, we're expecting, again, multiple hazards to play out over the next 24 to 36 hours. Storm surge along the coast from Georgia up to North Carolina. Heavy rainfall, flooding, tornado potential, and the winds of the storm itself in terms of the tropical storm and hurricane force winds that will play out here in the next 24 to 36 hours. A couple of reminders. We have widespread power outages across much of North Florida and working now into Georgia. We lose a lot of people after storms due to post-storm accidents, a lot of them involving improper use of generators, from carbon monoxide poisoning, other cleanup accidents. Power's out, there may not be stoplights, you may not have stop signs. We lose a lot of people in vehicle accidents as well, and from other medical access related issues. If you have a medical device that's dependent on power, make sure you have a way to power that. We don't want people to become a statistic after the storm. So please stay in your safe place until you're instructed to come out by your local officials. And please don't go into these areas that were evacuated, particularly along the Florida coast and the landfall region, until you've been told it's safe to do so by emergency officials, because you may be returning to an area where it's simply not safe to be. There may not be access to power, water, medical equipment, or medical services if you have an emergency or otherwise have an issue. So please stay safe during the next day or so as Idalia moves offshore, and stay safe after the storm. Stay tuned for more updates from the National Hurricane Center. I'm Mike Brennan.